the first 2 years she was already had a boyfriend, and then but my junior year she would have been, single. And I struggled with self-confidence to the point where I thought to myself, who would want to be with someone who can't even stand on his own 2 feet?
It's a dirty truth with Deante Young. Hit a main course, yeah, the entree done. Pull up on the gang, all the fly day ones. Tune in, come and see what Deante done. It's a dirty truth with Deante Young. Hit a main course, yeah, the entree done. Pull up on the gang, all the fly day ones. Tune in, come and see what Deante done. Like, just vibe with it.
Welcome to launch week of The Dirty Truth with Deante Young. I am Deante. Today's episode features my friend, the Cerebral Palsy Vigilante, Zach. Today's episode is called Why You Walk Funny. He's a tremendous human, author, speaker, half marathon runner. He's a massive inspiration with a remarkable sense of self. I always encourage everyone to embrace their dirty truth. He's been doing that for a very long time. And here he is. I am with the man, the myth, the legend, Zach. As a matter of fact, he calls himself how do you say this? The Cerebral Palsy Vigilante?
The Cerebral Palsy Vigilante.
Okay. See, my pronunciation is so off. Now, what exactly does that mean?
So actually, to take a step back, that was actually a nickname my friend James ended up giving me. So Cerebral Palsy Vigilante is a nickname, a moniker that kind of summons up my purpose, my drive to dispel misconceptions, not miscommunications, although there are also miscommunications, misconceptions of disability, and try to, educate people about life with a disability in a fun, engaging way.
Right. Well, I tell you what, you are, to me, a huge role model, and I see you as a star. And the reason why I see you as a star is not because of Academy Awards or Grammy Awards or any type of thing like that, perfect attendance, nothing like that, right? The reason why I see you as a star is because you're doing what most people don't, and that's just living your life to the fullest. And as we all say, you take your what they call trash and turn it into treasure, meaning you take your dirty truth and you make it into something magical and you serve other people. So I really, really appreciate that. I never knew exactly your journey, but I think I should let people know that Zach is actually an author and he is a speaker, which is extremely great. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Don't you run races and things like that?
I've done as far as the lengthiest distances I've done is a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. The way I say it like that, it makes it sound like it's not a big deal. But, it's 26.2 miles. That's definitely an endeavor to walk straight 26.2 miles. Yeah. I've done 3 half marathons, which is 13.1 miles. And when I did the marathons, that was back in 2017, 2018. The most recent half marathons I've done were 2023. So I'm, staying active, doing a bunch of 5Ks in between and 3.1 miles for anyone out there who's like, what are all these numbers he's spewing out? What does this exactly mean? And all that drive you mentioned, just living my life to its fullest and, taking trash and making it treasure, all that goes back to I wasn't always this way. There was a time where I let having a disability, cerebral palsy, make me let that embarrass me, make me feel different. It's like, oh, I'm different. It's like I wanted to just blend in and be like everyone else. And high school graduation was my turning point where, as I was that night, I just realized that some of these kids I had gone to school with since preschool or kindergarten, I never really gave them the true chance to get to know me because I was always so trying to hide my disability so I could blend in. So an example of that would be in getting physical therapy. There was one time in elementary school where I had physical therapists. I had a private physical therapist who worked with me at my house, and then I had a school therapist who would come in maybe once a week and work with me, typically during gym class. And this one day she came in, and one of the kids next to me goes like, "Oh, is that your grandmother?" I was just like, "No." And like no explanation, no like, so it's just really kind of like that defensive, shutting everything down. This conversation's not going any further. And I realized that through that just created, like it created a barrier for me to really get to know my peers. And so when I started in college, I really made a effort to, even though it was like, scary to go from very internal person, kind of an introvert, to become an extrovert, which I most definitely am now. But back then I was an introvert. It's just that list of regrets that I had from high school really kind of pushed me to help me grow and evolve and get me in part to where I am now.
I just think that's so amazing because so many of us, we live our lives really under the thumb of other people because of what they want us to be and what they think we should be. I am obviously a victim of that, as you can see with my girlish figure. That was my thing, where I was always heavier than a Chevy, and so I really admire that. So going back to the beginning, when you were a kid, what was it that was the turning point for you, where you realized that other people saw you as being different?
There was one memory from elementary school where I'm walking down the hall, and then another kid goes, "Why do you walk funny?"
Oh, wow.
And I was at the age, I knew I had a condition, but the term cerebral palsy wasn't exactly sticking in my 8-year-old mind. So it was just kind of like I sputtered out because I do. And that, I guess, would be the first occasion where I really where it was noticeable that I walked different from my peers. And then just in general, from not so much from my peers, but in class, the other kids weren't getting physical therapy. The other kids weren't missing gym class once a week because of physical therapy. Those kind of things. I was also getting speech therapy at the time. So those were kind of like cues of I'm different.
Yeah. So at what point did your parents kind of have a talk with you, or did you go to them directly, or did they come to you directly from the beginning? I'm
trying to recall. My parents did their best with me. They, at the time, writing Off Balance, my first book, which is that teenage memoir focusing on my teenage years, going from that embarrassment over having a disability and being different to learning to embrace it as a part of who I am, that emotional journey. Writing Off Balance and publishing that gave me a lot of respect for my parents' point of view, because for them, they were always just, I don't know if it was as much as a conversation as just them being protective, doing their best to raise me. One of the things, I have two brothers, older or younger, both play Little League. I wanted to play baseball, but every summer I brought it up. Every summer it was no. It's not safe for you. And I don't ever really recall sitting down and having a conversation along the lines of, you have cerebral palsy and this is what this means. Even as going back to the story in the hallway where the kid's like, "Well, why do you walk funny?" I knew at that point I had cerebral palsy, but it just that you at the start, Deante, you're like, how do I pronounce this? It was just like, and you're how old? It's like as an 8-year-old, it just that the term just did not really stick in my head. So,
wow. Because I always wondered, to be honest with you, I never really understood what cerebral palsy is. What actually is it?
So it's a neurological disability that impacts the brain, and how the brain affects the movements of your body. So there are a bunch of different kinds. My cerebral palsy, the specific diagnosis is spastic hemiplegic, which means spastic tight muscles. So one of the things I encounter a lot, I have to make sure I stretch regularly. My hamstrings are especially tight. And then in addition to that, so that's the spastic part, and then hemiplegic means it affects like half my body. So my right side is the side of my body that is more impacted with that's impacted by the CP.
Wow. No, so when the kid said, "Why do you walk funny?" did that change your whole perception of yourself, in the short term or in the long term? Because it's easy to really feel like a lot of self-doubt when other people are, basically throwing bow and arrows at you.
I can say no, and I can say no because kids in my grade were always great to me. It was the kids, like that kid Laura, he would have been, I believe, younger than me when he asked. And because I've had classmates in my grade who were good to me, it made it a little easier to be comfortable with myself to the level I was comfortable with myself. Because obviously I wasn't where I was, where I was like, I have physical therapy. It's like, no, I always try to, like, if we're trying to arrange with a friend, like, oh, let's do this after school on Monday. I would be like, well, I can't, and then not give a reason versus be, well, I can't because I have physical therapy. So as much as I was comfortable, with myself, a lot of that goes with the kids I had. The kids in my grade were always good to me. One story that comes to my mind is being out on the playground one time, and me and my friend Mike were just sitting around talking. Some kid came over and pushed me down, and thinking it was funny or whatever. Mike darted after the kid and chased him down the playground and then pushed him down. Wow. And I do feel I didn't encounter more bullying because other kids, like outside our grade, knew that there were kids in my grade who were watching out for me and had my back.
Wow. At any point did you want to date when you started getting a little bit older and then had a hard time with it? Because I know I definitely did. I couldn't get a girl to save my soul. I kept saying, please take my virginity, please. I will sell it to you. As a matter of fact, I'll give it to you for free. Did you have anything like that to happen?
So dating, it kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier about, you're joking about your size, or I don't know how much of it's joking, how much of it, a genuine feeling. In high school, again, this goes back to one of my regrets was I had a crush on a girl who was a grade ahead of me, mm-hmm. and I never asked her out. She was a year ahead of me. We ended up having a class together every year, though. So Donna is the name I mentioned in Off Balance, so that's the name we'll go with.
Oh, wow.
So in each year we had a class together, and the first 2 years she already had a boyfriend, and then that but my junior year, she would have been, single. And I struggled with self-confidence to the point where I thought to myself, who would want to be with someone who can't even stand on his own 2 feet? And so I just there was, so in short, yeah, as I got older, there's an interest in dating, and yes, having cerebral palsy and a disability, I let get to me and, affect my confidence and, self-esteem.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think that it's really sad because we actually don't feel any negative way about ourselves until other people put that into us. And then we start kind of in a certain way live our life for other people. And
Yes.
I am the ringleader at that for so long. But then you realize, man, you don't really need anyone's acceptance or validation.
Right.
And what it comes down to is the relationship you have with yourself. So at what point did you realize that you actually are somebody that's gifted, talented, that has a lot of important things to offer the world?
Gradual over time. So the big first step would have been when I was in high school graduation, where I had those regrets. And sometimes we just need something to stir us, to motivate us, to leave our comfort zone and try something different. And that, that idea of, wow, I went to school with some of these kids since preschool or kindergarten, and I didn't really give them a chance to get to know me. That was my thing, where going into college, I just, I was like, okay, I found ways to disclose my disability or mention my disability so that it wouldn't be an issue, because, it's funny, at 8 years old, when you have another kid doesn't know better than to say, why do you walk funny?
Yeah.
In college, you would think most 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds will be like, well, it's rude to ask, why do you walk like that? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, then that means they're just thinking about it, trying to figure out how they can ask it.
Yeah,
so I went to a college that was growing at the time, so they didn't really let you have a single room. But for my needs for physical therapy, to upkeep with my physical therapy and stretching and everything, I was able to get a single room for medical reasons to provide myself that, private space I would need. And so when people in college would ask me, oh, how did you get a single room? I would be able to bring up, oh, I have a disability and this is why. And sometimes people would be interested and they would ask further follow-up questions. Other times they'd be like, oh, okay, cool. And you'd move on to the, what movie are we going to watch tonight kind of deal. And so that was the, just having that motive of these regrets from high school pushed me. And then as you move forward and onwards, there is, gradually I am more confident now at 37 than when I graduated college at 22, or those first couple of years out, even when I published my first book, which would have been December of 2011, with the original copy of Off Balance. And it just, as you learn, I learn every day. I grow every day. When you come across difficult times, it's a way to build character and develop character. And so it's this confidence that you see now is a product of learning every day and gaining those experiences.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. It's really a superpower. The one main question I want to ask you before we take a break is, if you could choose any type of energy to be around you, what would that energy be from other people? Positive
energy, ambitious energy, action actually over instead of ambitious, I think action taking energy. I want to be around people who are like, let's go do this, or go do this, or go do that, and then actually do it. Like, it's ambitious people say, I want to do this, this, and this, but it's an action taker who takes that first step. Going back to like marathons, the idea to do a marathon for me came when I was reading a book, Someone Like Me by John W. Quinn. He also has cerebral palsy, and he served in the Navy for 20 years, despite his cerebral palsy. And with his, he had to lie to the Navy and be like, there's nothing wrong with me or anything, because otherwise he wouldn't have had the opportunity to serve. I mean, he passed their physical and everything, although he failed the first time. And then his recruiter was like, who fails the physical? It's all in his book, which I really recommend. But that was what motivated me to do a marathon. It wasn't until my friend, then I was like, well, I can only, the way I walk, the calluses on my feet, I have like my balance. Half a marathon's all I'm going to be able to do. And I did, so I did a half marathon my first half marathon in 2016. Then my friend James was like, well, when are you going to do the full marathon? And that's the kind of people I want to be around, because James kept asking, when are you going to do the full marathon? I finally was like, well, I'll do a full marathon if you do it with me. And he's like, okay. Next thing I know, I got a text that the race we agreed to do, that he had signed up for, just like out of the blue. And one day in June, May, I got the text, and I was like, okay, now this is serious. And so that I want to be around people who are going to uplift me, which means having a positive energy and really taking actions in their life instead of just sitting around talking about what they would like to do or complaining about why they're a victim in life.
Well, I tell you what, two things. Number one, don't ever fret that you can only do half a marathon, because I can only walk through a marathon gas station. That's about as deep as it gets for me. That's the first thing. The second thing is, those are some really great thoughts about the energy you want around you. The type of energy that I always say is the best is self-aware energy, because most people are not self-aware, and it sounds like when you really want to go to the next level with your self-belief, it starts with self-awareness, knowing who you are and who you're not, and what value you bring to the world, which is obviously a whole lot for you. But other people can make you feel like you don't bring any value, and you've really done well with that.
Yeah, it's important to surround yourself with the right people. I've worked places where the manager was basically like, oh, you don't like working here? Who cares? It's work. And then I've worked, and it's like, that's such a crap attitude to have. And sadly, it's what most of the society has, but that, we don't need to get into that.
I'm always talking about the dirty truth, and the dirty truth can be something that you're embarrassed about, ashamed of, or other people make fun of you of, or you're scared to admit a version of yourself that existed at some point in the past. What I would say with you, because I'm a really big proponent of turning your trash into treasure, and trash can be someone else's perception of your situation. I think a lot of people find problems in every opportunity, but really we should find opportunities in every problem. What I see from you is the things that you had to endure when you were younger, and probably even to this day, you probably get people asking you questions. Like you said, college people, why don't they seem to have, the tact to say, hey, wait, I'm not going to ask that question, or how can I find out how to ask that question? So what I would say is, the things that you have done, whether you realize it or not, you have become not only a role model, but someone that people can see as really an inspiration, a thought leader, someone that they can follow, because you have managed to not just be a wallflower and just sit back and say, yeah, you know what, I'm miscellaneous. I'm not going to do anything important in this world. Everyone sees me as different, but like you always say, don't blend in, blend out. And that's such a great way to be, because when you have something that other people see you as different or look at you sideways, what happens is you start to really look at yourself and say, okay, what's my uniqueness? what's my uniqueness, what's my specialness, not in an egotistical way, but what's my uniqueness and what's my specialness. And so you start to really lean on that, and then you end up creating magic for other people. And I always talk about how there's two types of people in this world, lifters and leaners. Leaners lean on you and suck the energy out of you, and they're just negative Nancy's. Lifters, they lift you up, they tell you can do it, they reaffirm you, and you have become that just by living example. I like when you wear your costumes. You had your you have like the cape on and all that stuff at the book fair, and then you had this other book event at one of those coffee shops that I attended. You do a lot of great things, and people see that. They see that. As a matter of fact, that book right there, Slow and Cerebral, that is your second book, you said. Even being an author, yeah, let's see this book. Even being an author, that's such a big deal. Yeah, like hold that up higher so we can see that. Yeah, that looks amazing. So even there, you are taking action. There's very few people that are taking action on a book cover. Usually that's the most stationary thing there is, but you manage to make motion on a still picture. But I think that you're turning your so-called trash into treasure, because you're saying that it doesn't really matter where you start or what people think of you. It's about what you actually are. And that is motivating to people, and you're leaving a legacy that most people can't even touch, because you're digging deep within you and you're realizing I'm no different than anyone else. As a matter of fact, I might even be a little bit beyond anybody else, because so many of us are not courageous enough to be our full selves. So you're turning that into treasure, and you're impacting people, and that right there is your self-worth. Forget about self-esteem. Forget about confidence. You can be insecure. Listen, I'm going to tell you the truth, the dirty truth. I'm insecure and very self-conscious, but at the same time, my relationship with myself is very strong, so my belief is strong. I'm very self-aware. So it ends up being a net positive when you can admit things and show vulnerability in public, because most people can't. That takes real strength, and you do that. And so I want to ask you, what do you think you've done to turn your so-called trash into treasure?
Well, first, thank you for all that. Another phrase that I don't know, coined, but I've used in the past is this idea that normal is a myth, which by that, each of us have something different about ourselves, whether it's a disability, color of our skin, financial background, parenting situation, growing up, whatever it is, we all have something different about ourselves. And if we're all different, what does that make normal? It's a myth. It's non-existent.
Yeah.
The key for me, a key component of everything you just said about me that really stuck out was not like I'm living my life with not really caring what other people think. And that really resonates as true to me. There was a time where, as the cerebral, it kind of fits into my Cerebral Palsy Vigilante moniker, where I work at a library as essentially my full-time job. And then when I'm off the clock, I'm off being the Cerebral Palsy Vigilante, writing my blog posts, having my different events. I even had an event recently, a mobility fair, where I was in this bright pink neon shirt, however you move shirt. And then I had you mentioned wearing like a cape and the face mask. I wore those, and I was preparing a trifold to have set up at my table. And I was talking to my coworker and I was explaining what was on my trifold, and that included like a picture of me from one of the races I did where I wore a cape. And she goes, "Are you going to wear it?" And I'm like, "That's a great idea." Most people, I think, would have been so embarrassed, like, what are people going to think of me? And it ended up being like the perfect visual, because as I talked to different people at the event, I would talk about how I would go from, I used to want to blend in, instead of just being like, I used to want to blend in and now I blend out. Instead, I would just motion to myself the cape the shirt I was wearing. I was like, I used to want to blend in. Now look at me. And like, it's that visual spoke so much louder, because then people were responding to that. Like, yeah, you don't give a, or,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you have, it just shows confidence. And even on like at work, there will be times where my shoelace got caught in one of our floor vents as I was moving around, and it got caught. And next thing I know, I fell. My coworker was like, "Oh, are you all right? Need help up in anything?" And later on, I was telling the story. Most people are probably like, "Oh, I fell at work. I'm so embarrassed," and not ever try to never bring it up. I'm telling people the story. I don't care. And there was I was telling the story, and when coworker helped me up. Then the customer would ask if I was all right, and my coworker goes, and the coworker I was talking to goes, "Oh, that's unfortunate. There was a customer." I'm just like, why? I have a disability. I fall. It happens. And that just, there's a sense of, I just don't register. In a way, I just don't register like, oh, what are other people going to think? Steve Harvey said this quote, or at least this is where I heard it from, and I've taken it and I live by it, is other people's opinions of you are none of your business, nor should you make it yours.
That's very true. That's very true. I completely and totally agree with that. And the thing about it is that everything you just said was so authentic and so human. That's the thing, is that when you really like just stay full into who you are and you express fully who you are, what you're doing is you're creating connection. I always say perfection never creates connection. But because the things that you're saying and the things that you're doing, you're just being very brutally honest about the way real people are. Even the most successful and filthy richest people in the world, they have a lot of shortcomings that they're afraid to admit. As a matter of fact, they're probably the most insecure people. It's okay to be insecure, but it's all about how you manage it. And, I just think so many people try to pretend like they're perfect, and you're busy saying, hey, look, whatever I am, I'm not going to let fear or any of your opinions make me minimized. And that's the important thing. That's the enduring message, I would say. From my perspective, when I look at you, I say that's your enduring message, in my opinion. And it's just like you said, Steve Harvey says, it's not none of your business what anyone else thinks. And I just think that's great. It just reminds me of my co-host and wife, Billy Badass. That's the nickname that I gave her. Nice. I love the fact that she has, obviously her name is Billy Joe, so I call her Billy Badass. But the thing I like about her is that she has a podcast coming out called Mind Your Opinions. And I think that that's pretty much what you're talking about in so many words. And I guarantee you have a lot of people that you've inspired, whether it was in college, whether it's, like you said, when you leave, you're pretty much Clark Kent when you're here. And then you turn into Superman when you go, or you're Bruce Wayne here and you turn into Batman. One of those two, or maybe all of them. And I love what you said about some people would say, oh, yeah, I'd be afraid to wear a pink shirt or to wear a costume or all that. Like, do you realize more people that are not you, when you're doing that, they get embarrassed. You are just fine. Yeah. And I think that's the secret thing that we know, that when you live fully in yourself, it's a lot easier to be calm and comfortable as opposed to pretending to be someone else. And I just never see that from you.
Yeah, well, it goes back to always being truthful and honest too, because otherwise, otherwise you're trying to remember, well, what I said, what was I trying to pretend, what was I trying to, how was I trying to perceive myself or put myself out there as, and then you have to keep tabs on your lies essentially, and it's an energy zapper, and I don't have time for that. I'm going to be authentically me, and live my life my way.
Do you have anything that you actually haven't done that you really want to do?
Anything that I haven't done that I really want to do.
Like be in a movie or write a whole nother book or create an online course or go on a book tour? Or
There's always, I would like to do more. I have ideas for more books, in my mind. I have, I think I haven't really thought about it. But that's a great question. I appreciate you asking, because this goes back to where we talked earlier about the kind of energy you want around you. You want people who are going to cultivate and challenge you to do more. And that question just has me, what exactly do I want, and how do I go about taking actions to get it?
I tell you what, the genesis of that question really is because of the enthusiasm you have for my book, Winning is for Losers. And for whatever reason, you really, really kind of took to that book. So just kind of explain to the dirty truthers out here in the world exactly what made you kind of gravitate towards that book, because I feel like that there was some synergy between you and that book.
Oh, for sure. Winning is for Losers. I just love the concept, because it goes back to earlier you were talking how there, even the richest people have insecurities, and we tend to put people on this pedestal in life to say, oh, they have that, and they were just born with this, like they were born with the resources, born with whatever, they were born with the abilities, the skill, and we write it off as like, oh, I can't do this. I mean, I'll even put you on the spot here, Deante. You mentioned earlier, like, oh, I can hardly walk through a marathon gas station. I couldn't do a half marathon. I bet you I would do one with you if you ever got serious about it. Like, let's go. It's one of those things where I think we put on these rose-colored glasses when we look at success and think it is all just this uphill trajectory, and it's not. And that's what your book, Winning is for Loser, really covers. It's like the losing is what earlier too, I mentioned how, learning every day to get to where I'm at now. Learning every day, growing more confident, developing character. A perfect example of that would be the first 5K I ever did, which has its own chapter in Slow and Cerebral. And with that first 5K, I finished dead last. I was not expecting that. And then, I'm finishing behind. I'm having dogs who keep stopping to go to the bathroom, and then going, like the dogs and their owners are beating me. It was, it was very frustrating for me at first, until I was able to put into perspective that my competition, it wasn't everyone else on the course. It was myself.
Yeah.
And so now when I do races, I'm comparing it to my past performance from the previous year I've done it, versus trying to, try to compare myself to any other competitor on this, on the stage. So that just Winning for Losers really echoed that in a way that it's not just one person whose story, because you interviewed how many successful people for that book, and they each gave their insights. So I really connected with that, because it helps to dispel this idea that success is this just victory party all the time.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Winning is for Losers came out in September of 2021. And the book's concept is basically the people that do the most winning are the ones that do the most losing, because they try more than anyone. And quite frankly, what I would say is I have another book that came out last year. It's called I'm Done Kissing Your Ass. And what that really means is that I was always putting people on a pedestal. And basically, I've come to realize that people we put on pedestals are no different than us. And so we're kind of kissing their ass when we say, oh, look at you. You have this, you have that. Perfect example. You didn't say, well, I don't have what this person has, so I can't run a marathon. You just said, I'm going to do it. You didn't say, "Oh, well, I don't know the first thing about writing a book." You just found a way to do it, and you did it. I'm not Stephen King. I can't write a book. I can't. Stephen King had his doubts as well, just like James Patterson, just like every other person you can think of. So that basically means I'm done kissing your ass, meaning I'm done putting you up here and me down here. I'm done talking about your highlights and my beginner status. It's not a fair fight. Let's compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And that's the whole thing that I get from you. And I just really think that what you do every day is you're pretty much saying, I'm done kissing your ass, meaning everyone else who doesn't have the disability that I have, you all have some type of disability, even if it's a lack of self-awareness. And that's the biggest disability.
I remember finishing the first draft I had of Off Balance. It was under another name then. And I remember finishing that first draft and being so glued to it that I had no idea whether it was any good or not. And I found some beta readers to read the manuscript, give me feedback. And I think I kept 2 or 3 pages from that entire first draft because the feedback I got, no one came out directly and said, wow, this sucks. But the closest it came was one of my professors from college, Dr. Bloom, Michael Bloom. He looked at it. He goes, it reads as a narrated medical history, and I read in between the lines of that as it's not very good.
Wow.
And I went back to the table and I decided, all right, how can I focus? What's my narrative arc, and how can I focus so that I can go take it and create an interesting story from point A to point B that has some kind of worth and value to it, rather than just me talking about my first 22 years of life.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of another example of where it's like that failure leads to, a lot of times in my marathon training, I was pushing myself at first to do the marathon without needing a cane or any kind of assistive device. And I kept struggling with that. But every time I do a 10-mile plus training session, I would find myself falling, and I just decided, I was like, you know what? And I was honest with myself. That self-awareness is so key that you keep mentioning. I asked myself, Zach, why don't you want to use your cane? And I answered myself, because I don't want to be cheating myself. And that, it just hit me. I'm like, well, you're walking 26.2 miles. There's no cheating yourself. And so I started training with a cane, and with a marathon to even start, where do I go from here? Where do I start with it? With a book, where do I start with it? I was asking people questions. I was doing research, reading books, especially on, there's so many books out there about publishing, whether it's self-publishing, traditional publisher. So reading books, going out there to get, to do some research, get the information. With the marathon journey, I reached out to a couple of different people who've done marathons. Earlier I mentioned John Quinn, the author of Someone Like Me, how his book inspired me to even, go about it. He had done a marathon, and I ended up reaching out with him, and he helped me form an entire training strategy, training schedule that helped allow me to become a marathoner. So it's reaching out to people who've done what you want to do and asking them if they would be able to give you some insights, and just finding a way to do some, doing your research, books online, and figuring out how can I, what do I want? You earlier asked me if there's anything I wanted to do that I haven't done yet. And I'm going to pose that same question to all your listeners. What are you doing out there? Or listening to this? Obviously, if you're listening to this, you have ambition in you. You want to do stuff with your life. So what is that one thing you want to do, and how can you take that first step?
I think that's a beautiful question, man, because it's amazing how we just don't even realize what we're capable of sometimes because we are busy talking about why not as opposed to why so. And that goes into the whole thing of, problems in every opportunity as opposed to opportunities in every problem. I just think that's great, man.
Yeah, definitely. There's just one of the books I read that really helped me change my perspective to be more courageous was Living This Rodeo by Shane Michael Taylor. Someone else with cerebral palsy, much more advanced than me. And within his book, he's talking about like, what if I do this, and how we stress ourselves out over picturing like these negative scenes in our head. It's like stuff that's not happened, but we focus so much on it in our head, it becomes real to us and it creates real stress. So what if, it's like, what if this happens? But what if it works out? What if it's a positive?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's funny because people always say, oh, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And I always say, what would you do even if you knew you would fail? Because that's actually a much better question. Because
I believe that's one of the questions that you would ask the people in Winnings for Losers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things because if you think about it, if it's something you would do even if you knew you'd fail, that means that you're going to really stick with it and give it all your passion, because it's not something you're not doing it for as a means to an end. And I just think that so many of us, we let the world tell us what we can't do. And sometimes we are our own worst enemy. We are the ones that tell us no because we don't even put the first foot forward, And when you talk about these marathons, I'm just like, wow, that's so significant because that's what, 26.2 miles?
Correct.
Yeah. And even a half marathon is like obviously half of that. So it's just like, I might be able to do half a marathon, walk through half a marathon gas station. That's about it. But I might take you up on your offer, man. Seriously.
That'd be fun.
If I get to drive the half marathon, No, but seriously though. But anyway, man, I just want to tell you that you are such a hero, such a role model. It makes sense that you're wearing these super costumes because it really is who you are. I mean, when you're just in your plain clothes, you're never more heroic to me than you are when you're doing that, because you're just being your authentic self. And I love how the watch matches with that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. See, I told you, whenever I say that Zach is one to watch, I mean that literally and figuratively. Seriously.
Thanks. I mean, my fashion sense is also like that's something that's developed over the last couple of years, and it all started with this one shirt that was kind of like, Saved by the Bell opening vibes to it, and it was pink. I remember wearing it for the first time and being like, oh, then I'm like, you know what? No, I'm like, it's like, I'm an attention whore. I can handle this. And then, not that I do it for attention. I do it because it makes me happy. And it's funny because, like, how I dress has kind of become a thing where I work, where, like, customers come in and be like, oh, we just want to see what you're wearing today.
Yeah.
And then you have other customers who make comments. Like, one time she goes like, well, just a question for you. Did you, like, when you woke up this morning, were like, well, what can I...
Library, please come to the checkout desk. Skylar Shevley, if you're in the library, please come to the checkout desk. Thank you.
I'll start over so we can edit
That was funny.
that out. Yeah. So whether you want to edit that out or if we are just, as I said, it was like, oh, did you just dress today to decide to, see what, the most attention you can attract? And I just kind of like laughed off the first time, and then she asked it again. I'm just like, I just for one person, that's myself.
That's awesome.
I don't need anyone, I'm not looking for anyone else's approval. And it's like after that person left, my coworker goes like, she's just jealous because she knows you're not fly. She's not fly like you or something.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just one of those things where some people might try to, pressure like, oh, that's colorful or whatever. It's like, and, it's, I have a colorful personality. I like to, showcase that in, what I wear and everything, and try to coordinate, just be me.
Well, I tell you what, I'd much rather someone say, oh, that's colorful, than to say, hey, you colored folk. That's usually what I get. But
that's not good.
Zach, do you have a special woman in your life or what?
No, I'm single. So
do you like staying that way?
Yeah, I mean, there's no sense to be in a relationship just for the sake of being in a relationship.
But if the right one comes along.
If the right person came along, yeah, I would be, I would have interest. But it's just all comes, yeah.
Yeah. So in other words, what Zach is saying, he gets more interest from his bank account than these people out here that are just, not always on the up and up. Trust and believe, Zach. I understand what you're saying because, my woman, I had no plans of being in a relationship, but she made herself undeniable. Shout out to Billy Badass of The Dirty Truth with Deante Young. And Zach, how can people reach you if they want to talk to you on social media?
So I am everywhere from X, Instagram, both Zachary Fennell, at Zachary Fennell, Facebook, author Zachary Fennell. You can reach all my social media, though, through my website, zacharyfennell.com. So
let's see that book again.
Zachary Fennell.
Hold it back. You don't have to do it in front of the mic. You can do it like right here. Okay. Yeah, that book looks incredible.
And so that website's right there. I'll try to persuade Deante to make sure he puts the my website somewhere in the show notes so that people can easily get access to it. And then, reach out. Let me, whether it's something I said. Also, go on my website. You get to check out my blog and see if anything there catches your interest. One of the posts that I actually did a post based off what Deante's book, Winning is for Losers, kind of, it's funny. I guess it helped manifest this, where I took the questions he asked the people in the book, and then I answered them myself as if he was asking them to me. And here we are now doing this podcast where you are here asking me the questions and I'm answering.
Yeah, we manifested that. So I do want to give you a round of applause. Yay. I'm a fan before I'm anything else. Thanks, brother.
Thank you so much.
So Zach was exceptional, just like I knew he would be. And I also want to remind you all to embrace your dirty truth.